Hi, y'all. First of all, I'm going to give you the website, the Utah State Board of Education Digital Teaching and Learning website. So I took you directly to the EdTech Management Resources page. But if you want to go to the DTL grant program, this will tell you all about the DTL grant program. But we're just going to focus on the EdTech Management program. So through the Digital Teaching and Learning grant, USBE gets funding for every single school that's in the DTL program, which is most schools. It's all districts and 2/3 of charters. So if you are in the Digital Teaching and Learning grant program, you have access to an EdTech management resource. You're guaranteed that. If you are not in the Digital Teaching and Learning program, check in with us. And if we have funds available, we can set you up. And we just know that year to year, whether or not that's the case. So checking in with the DTL team would be a good way to know that. Through the Digital Teaching and Learning grant program, you have a choice of 4 different providers. And these are in alphabetical order: ClassLink, Global Grid for Learning, Learn Platform by Instructure, and Lightspeed. And so the deadlines for this past year were a little bit later because the procurement process took longer than we anticipated. And so last year's deadlines were November 1st through November 8th. This year's deadlines will be made known to you through the DTL list. If you are in the DTL program, we have your information and we will send that to you. If you're not in the DTL program, please feel free to email any one of us.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate form, but some of my charter schools want to use Clever, for example. I think, is that the same as Global Grid for Learning, maybe?
It is not.
Or some single sign-on.
You bring up a really good point, and I'm really glad that you brought this up. A lot of the 4 companies that met the procurement qualifications, a lot of them have single sign-on availability. And that's just a bonus. That's an add-on. So the DTL program is not meant to fund single sign-ins. It's meant to fund managing your EdTech systems, the usage that you have. So it's a bonus if you choose a program that does that. And you can tell what each program does by clicking on these links, and it will give you an overview of what the provider does as well as a video.
Lightspeed Insight. I'm very excited to walk you all through how Lightspeed Insight can help answer a ton of different questions for your LEAs. Thank you to USBE for putting together this awesome template. The way this is going to work is there's a list of sort of categories and questions that I'm going to be addressing. I'll go through section by section and then show you screenshots too, so you can actually see some visuals of some of the things that I'm going to be talking to you guys about. Before I dive into the weeds, though, and we're going to start with this sort of centralized app request process. It's our first category. Just to give you a high level on what Digital Insight or Lightspeed Insight is, I sort of think of it in 2 parts. It's part analytics and reporting and part workflows around the app approval process, the vetting process, request process, license management, ROI reporting, public list management. So it's like sort of this management system plus a reporting and analytics system. It's going to do both things. We'll touch on both as I go through and answer these questions in these different categories. All right, so the first place that we'll start, probably something that is very top of mind for everybody, is the app request process and how we help streamline. Again, on the left are the questions that USBE has so graciously put together to make sure that I hit on everything that you guys are looking to learn about. So kind of the first thing is just generally how can Insight be a source of information for teachers and staff and provide a defined workflow for app requests. This system really is designed to be that central place, not just for vetting apps and kind of like, keeping track of everything that's either in your approval process or has already been vetted by you, But it's also the centralized source of truth for what's being used, regardless of where it is in the process. So if you just want to know what was accessed by one of my school students, really any device that you guys have in your LEA, it's going to have all that information too. So it's kind of that one-stop shop that does both things. How do teachers and staff initiate app requests? One of the big parts of our product is a public list of everything that you were either in the process of vetting or have already vetted, and you have control over how that looks. I'll show you some screenshots so you can see how that would actually work. It's fully customizable. You have the option to turn on or off a request form. And then you can take that public list and do several things with it. You can embed it on your website. You can link out to it. And we actually are giving Lightspeed Classroom for free to all of you in Utah. So you can also connect it to your classroom system, management system, and then your teachers would just have that list of apps and also that request form directly in their classroom management solution, which is really easy for them to be able to request apps from there. What routing / approval processes are built into the workflow? For example, IT, curriculum, and legal. So we have role-based access to our system, which means you can control who accesses what. So I mentioned we've got like tons of data on top of all these workflows. You can lock the platform down to just approvals or just reporting or just even one school's data. Like it's totally flexible in terms of who you're giving access to. So you can give any department that participates in your approval process access to the platform and make it very specific. Like maybe you don't want finance digging around and looking at student level data. You can just give finance access to the approval workflow in that case. So you're going to be able to make sure that all those teams can participate without getting too much access to other data. Which brings me to the next question. How does the system ensure appropriate stakeholders review and approve requests? So once those stakeholders have been given access, the way the approval system works, and again, I'll show you a screenshot, is there's going to be a queue of apps that either are in the needs review state or are currently in review. And everybody gets their own little view of that to say, hey, what's waiting on me to take a look at? So every stakeholder who you give access to will have that queue and be able to work off of that. Is the workflow customizable? Yes. It's, we work with districts across the country to actually create this process. And so we know that every school district LEA has a little bit of a different process. And there's always some customization that folks need to build in. So we allow for all that within our system. Last question around role-based permissions. And I touched on this already. But the whole system is designed to be able to carve it up however you need to so that you can just give access to the right things. We obviously don't want users to be overwhelmed by getting access to too many things that aren't relevant to their role. So you can create a role maybe called, IT approval reviewers or, finance. Maybe the finance folks look at ROI reporting and approvals. And again, that's all going to be fully customizable based on what you're looking to do. So let me show you some screenshots related to the things I just mentioned. One of the first things I mentioned is that the platform tracks everything in use, regardless of whether you're vetting it or not. That is an automatic process we have agents and extensions for Chrome, Mac, Windows, and iOS. So if you're in a mixed environment, we cover everything. And those agents are just going to report in what they're seeing on those devices. You don't have to do anything. So you'll be able to see a full list of every app in use, and you can filter that by school, filter it by grade level, category of app, risky apps. Like you can really carve this up however you need to, and then get that list of everything that's being used. It's going to help you also decide, what do I need to vet? So say you look at this list, you can sort this by the top used applications. That's going to show you all the apps that you know about, like your LMS, your classroom management solution, that kind of thing, your textbooks. If you sort by least used, that's where you're going to start to see things you didn't know about, those unknown apps that need to be looked at. Maybe a new AI app, that comes onto the market, maybe a new foreign-owned app that comes onto the market. You'll be able to see all of that, whether you knew about it or not, and that's really helpful in knowing what you need to be vetting. Allowing teachers and staff to make requests that funnel into the system. What you're seeing here in kind of the grayed out background is going to be that public facing list. So you'll be able to have a place where you share out, hey, here's everything that we're either looking at or have already looked at and vetted. And then you see this request application button up here. Staff can come in and put in a new request that's going to flow straight back into our system for you to review, which is really helpful. So everything will always live in one place. Here's the custom roles that I mentioned. So you can see here on the left, like there's several kind of predefined roles that come from our system. But down here, you see these custom roles, like app approvals is a custom role that I created for our test district. Stakeholders who only have access to the approval process, or department directors, so stakeholders that only have access to certain reporting. So you can really just carve this up however you need to. And on the right, you can see it's just different checkboxes to say, yeah, I want this role to have access to licensing and approvals only, or public list only. And there's more options than just these three. There's a scroll bar here. There's like 12 different checkboxes that you could decide exactly what that role needs to see. And then you can assign users to those roles. So you can add 6 people to the approval process and just give them all that app approvals role so they have access to the right information. And then collaborating across departments to vet and approve apps and requests. So this kind of just shows you what the approval process looks like. Here on the left, you see this is like a queue, and we've got these different statuses: needs review, in review, approved, not approved. So if you are part of the approval process, you can come in here. You can actually filter by requests or reviews that are waiting on you specifically to look at them, which is helpful. So kind of like your personal queue. And then you can filter by, hey, just show me what's, needs review or what's currently in review that I need to be looking at. So it's a very kind of collaborative place for everybody to come and filter and look at what they need to, and based on their role. On the right, if you were to click on any of these applications that are in the process, what you would see is what's shown here on the right. So there's sort of 3 different sections. One is this app preview section. This is information that Lightspeed maintains for you, things like the description, privacy policy. You can see the last time it was updated, links to the privacy policy in terms of use. That's actually another part of this presentation. And then request details. So if it came from a teacher, you would see what they had put in. So say they had said, hey, I need, this is the date that they requested it. Here's the app. You probably saw a couple screens ago, they could put in how will you use it. So you would see this information. Anything that they put in their form is what's going to show up here in this request details section. And then on the right, here's all the information that your teams are going to use to update whether it's approved or not. So things like a comment, maybe you say, hey, it's approved, but only for certain use cases or for staff. When does it expire? That's going to tell our system, hey, remind them that in a year they need to look at this app again. Is it approved for all campuses or just some, all grade levels or just some? We know a lot of apps are only appropriate for certain ages. So you can say, hey, this is only appropriate for high school kids. And then district description and district tags. This allows you to customize and put whatever you want in this sort of approval object, which can be then published out to your staff. So this is actually rich text, like you can put in colors and embed videos. So if say you had a training video or anything that you kind of want to make sure people can see or know, maybe how you want them to be used, you could put all that here. And then attachments, you can actually upload DPAs or anything that you want. And again, all of this can be shared out with your staff. All right, so moving on to the next sort of section of the presentation, which is around procurement and evaluating app effectiveness. So here are the questions, and here's our table. So here on the left again are the questions thanks to USBE, and then I'll kind of walk you through how Insight helps address those different questions. All right, so this is really all geared towards evaluating app effectiveness. So please explain how your EMS facilitates that evaluation and aligns with evidence-based standards for EdTech adoption. So the beauty of the product is that it provides that real-time adoption data And that is across all devices and all users. So what's really cool, we sync with student information systems to show you this data at so many different levels. So you can look at adoption data at the whole LEA level. Like, what are the top adopted math apps, the top adopted reading apps across the whole LEA? You could look at the school level, the grade level, course and section. So you can look at AP Math, like what are the top AP Math apps that are being used? You can drill all the way down to a student. And I have a screenshot and I'll kind of show you what that user level profile looks like. So there's so many different ways to look at the data, and that is going to help you really figure out what's working. And then obviously, ideally, you can scale what works. So like a common use case that we hear is folks will identify maybe some champion teachers or schools with, really good performance, and they'll sort of use the product to dive in and say, what's going on at that school? What's going on in that class? And then say, okay, well, we're going to roll that out further. This application that is really effective, we're going to roll this out maybe LEA wide or maybe to like other similar classes to essentially scale that use case and that successful use case of that application. Next section, how do we capture the data related to app usage? So that we have what we call smart agent technology. It's basically just a lightweight extension or agent that gets deployed out to the devices, school-owned devices, of course. Like I mentioned, Mac, Windows, iOS, Chrome, we cover everything, which means we don't miss anything. So whether you knew it was being used or not, whether it's happening on a Windows machine or a Chromebook, we're going to see it all. It's going to all roll into the same dashboard, which is nice. That's also in and out of school. So if a student takes home an LEA-owned device and continues to use it to study, do their homework, surf the web, whatever they're doing, we're going to see all that data as well. And that's all customizable. You guys can turn that off if you don't want to see out of school data, but it's there. The option is there if you wanted to. So that's kind of how the technology works. And again, you kind of push the agent or extension out at the beginning of the school year to all those devices, sync up your sys, and then that's really all that you have to do before the data will just start rolling in within a day. Can the EMS integrate with other data sources to provide a holistic view? Yes, we can. I mentioned we integrate with student information systems already. And everything that you see in these screenshots, and we're happy to give demos as well, is exportable in so many different ways. We've got APIs. We connect to certain like visualization platforms. You can export everything to CSV. So really it's designed you can do analysis in the product, but you can also push the data elsewhere so that you can do that analysis somewhere else and kind of pair it with other data sources like assessment data or outcome data of some sort to make some of those connections and essentially find what's working by integrating that usage data from Lightspeed. Does the EMS provide reporting tools? We sure do. There's sort of two different things we provide. A lot of our reporting is customizable. Like you can build your own dashboards and share those. You can build your own reports, visualization. So you can stay in the tool and kind of customize what you need to see. We also have pre-built reports. So if you don't want to spend any time building reports, that's fine. We have ROI reporting, app activity reporting, student data privacy reporting. That's all kind of built in. And really, as soon as you push that extension or get that sys synced, that data starts rolling in within a few hours. So there's not a lot of setup unless you want to go the customization route. How can LEAs use the EMS to pilot and evaluate new apps before wider adoption? So this is a really common way that our product is used, where folks will essentially like test out an app with a certain group of teachers or maybe a whole school, and then use our product to track adoption and see how it's being used. Is it being used to the degree that we thought? We have active window, which is essentially like time on app. So is it being used for the amount of time that we expected? Maybe it's a really expensive application and you're expecting to see a certain level of adoption. Some vendors recommend a certain level of adoption. They say, hey, 20 minutes a day. You can actually track all that. And if it's maybe you spot some early successes or alternatively, maybe it's a total flop. Either way, you can track that in our system and then decide, hey, yeah, we're going to scale this up. We're going to roll this out further, or We're going to move on and try something different. Last question, how does the EMS support LEAs in aligning app procurement with evidence-based research and established evidence tiers? So there's a whole part of our application, just like we have a whole section around approvals. We have a whole section around return on investment and really helping the procurement folks, like arming them with data to make the right choices in terms of what they're purchasing and what's being renewed. So you can see that adoption data, like I mentioned, at all these different levels, the course, the section, the grade, the school. So if you bought an application for, let's call it the whole LEA, and you look and you say, hey, only half of this, a lot of times we see not even half of the students are using this application. You can trim it back. You can figure out maybe there are some sections of the school population that are using it a lot. They're power users. So maybe you find, hey, this is not a great, a widely used application, but you've got a couple of schools that are using the heck out of it. You can make sure that you're not taking tools away that are actually making a difference for certain groups of staff or students. And then the last thing I'll say is if you have sort of like two tools that are both, well established in the research and you feel like they're gonna help meet your instructional goals, you can compare the adoption and then say, well, one of these is much more widely adopted. Usually that means staff find it easy to use, teachers have been trained, they understand how to use it. So it can help you kind of make decisions around like choosing between two tools, figuring out what's actually being adopted, what's easy to use, that sort of thing. All right, now for the screenshots. I mentioned that you can look at data at all sorts of different levels. This just kind of shows you some examples of what that looks like. And everything you're seeing here is kind of out of the box, meaning none of this you have to build yourself. This just shows up as soon as you get those agents deployed. On the left, for any app, you can see the usage at the campus level, grade level, and then you can see trends over time. So the campus level is going to show you all your schools. You can see how many individual users are using the application, how many engagements, that's basically how often are they using it, how many devices are sort of using it, which is a lot of times if you're one-to-one, going to be very similar to your unique user count. And then active window, that's that kind of screen time metric that we have to show you how often are they really actively using this application, like how many minutes down to the seconds per day on average is this being used. And you've got the option to go back really as long as you're a customer, we're going to keep your data. So say you deploy agents and you keep us for 5 years, you'll be able to use that date picker to say, show me how this compares to last year or the year before. Like, is adoption stagnant? Is it growing? Like, what does this look like over time? And you can do, go back one. You can do the same thing at the grade level as well. So you can look at all the different grades and kind of make that same comparison. The usage trends is going to show you kind of over time, and this is sort of test data, which is why every weekend there's no usage at all, but in the real life, you typically do see some usage on the weekends. This is going to show you how that is changing over time, and you can see things like, what's my top school, my top grade, what percentage of users are actually using the application, to get a sense of how this is trending over the course of whatever time period you select. And then on the right, I mentioned you can go all the way down to the student. Our student profiles are very cool. There's something very kind of unique about what we have. For any student or teacher, anyone who you deploy the agent out to, and you can decide who that is, it's up to you. You're going to be able to see this really robust profile of the student's activity. This is really helpful if you want to give like principals access to this platform. You can lock down the data to just certain schools. So, they can troubleshoot if they get calls from parents or they have an issue with a student. This is a great troubleshooting tool, but also from an instructional perspective, being able to understand if you've got a class that's really high performing and you want to see kind of what those kids are doing, it's a great way to explore how applications are really used, like down to an individual level. You can see if you click on any different day here, like an hourly breakdown of here's how that device is used, here's how they're hopping around different applications, and kind of here's what's going on, which is very cool. Plus, you can get some really good like average screen time metrics, which is helpful if you're trying to do any type of screen time reporting up to the state. We've also got the customizable dashboards. So there's lots of things that you can create yourself, depending on what you're looking to do. This on the left is going to show you when you first log in. This is kind of your home page. At the top here, you've got your kind of key metrics for your whole LEA. But then down here, you can create as many dashboards as you want. And those are just going to be live data for you to see at any time. Things like show me my top app, show me how devices are being used throughout the day, in and out of school data. You can share these with other people. And people can share dashboards with you. So maybe you create a dashboard that you love and you want to share those to all those department heads. You can push those out so that folks all have the same view and are kind of operating off that same source of truth. On the right, we have a data exploration tool where you can build your own visualization. So I just built a few examples here, like here's a screen time report for IXL broken down by grade. So really you can come in here and if you've got a question, maybe the superintendent wants to know something very specific, you can kind of come in and build whatever visualization you need to, and then export everything that you see. You're always going to see this little download button. Can be exported to almost always Excel and PDF or like an image to be put into a PowerPoint so that you can share that out with other leaders within your district. We've got tons of predefined reports. I mean, you've seen a bunch of them already, but one that I think is relevant to this conversation is our student data privacy dashboard. This is you have the option to kind of pin this as your homepage if that's kind of your angle of looking at the data. And you can just see things like new apps that have never been seen before. So you can say, hey, what are the new apps on my network, over the last 2 days, 3 days, 30 days, and kind of see what's new that you may need to vet. On the right here, apps that collect PII that you haven't approved yet. So if you haven't approved the app and it's actually collecting student data, you'll see that here. I mentioned that we track those expiration dates. That's going to kind of say, hey, here's what's coming up soon that you're going to need to look at again. And then on the right, I haven't touched on this too much, is our privacy policy updates. And I'll talk about this more later, but we actually track every privacy policy in our app library, which is like upwards of 8,000 applications. We track when those privacy policies are changing. So you'll get a proactive email saying, hey, something that you've approved, the policy change, you need to go take a look at it. And you'll also get this widget here kind of showing you what's changed since you last logged in. And then the procurement piece that I mentioned at sort of the last in the previous section, we have lots of ROI sort of related reporting. On the left here, you can see the idea is that you tell our system how many licenses you bought and what you paid, and we're going to tell you what the actual usage is, and therefore what are you paying for the active users of that platform. So say you spent $1 a student for 500 students, but only 100 are using the app. Your actual dollar per active student is going to look very, very different than what you'd originally planned. So that's kind of what this is all designed to show you. Here on the left top, you can see a breakdown by school. So if you've put in all your purchases, you can look at how that is broken down at the school level. The bottom screenshot shows you at the app level how that can be broken down. And then on the right, this is showing you one individual application's ROI. So you can see there's a lot of different ways to look at the data. But you can see here that this app is compliant, meaning, you bought 61,000 licenses and you used almost all of them, all but, call it 59. So this actually shows you that this app worked out well. You used exactly how many you bought, but more often than not, we see that the licenses generally are not used to the degree that folks think that they are. Okay, so now moving on to our next section around privacy vetting and compliance. So I'll kind of walk you through how this product helps enhance that vetting process for you guys. And this is an area where we've spent a lot of time innovating. I think data privacy is probably one of our strongest areas. So I'm excited to kind of talk to you about what that looks like. The first question here, how do we display vendor privacy policies in terms of service? There's actually a screenshot I showed you previously where you could see those links. We have a very robust app profile with tons of information in it that we will maintain on your behalf. You don't have to do anything. We maintain all those apps, including the privacy policies in terms of service. So they're going to always be there up to date for you. You don't have to do anything to keep track of those. where and how can you view and store the privacy status? So you'll have full control over those approval statuses as part of that process that I showed you. So you can decide what's approved in review, not approved, not appropriate to use. And then so you can filter any report throughout our product by those different statuses. So that'll be something that you guys can maintain and easily see and share out with your stakeholders, the different privacy statuses of all the different applications. Is it possible to list them and view their privacy status? Yes. We have that whole section that I showed a screenshot of is essentially just a long list of all the apps that are in your process and what state they're in. So are they in review, approved, not approved, etc. How do we help track and manage DPAs? So we actually will allow, you can upload a DPA for any application in our library. That's one of the areas that you can customize. So you can upload any documents that you need to any app and share that out with your stakeholders. So if you want to make this kind of your central repository for DPAs, you can totally do that and keep everything in one spot, which actually leads to kind of the next two questions around direct linking to DPAs and exhibits through SDPC. We do partner with SDPC. That's going to be an automatic update. So any DPAs or exhibits in SDPC for any application are going to pull into our system. So you can see all of those. They're going to be up to date. You don't have to go into SDPC. You can see them all on those app profiles. And then in addition, you can also upload your own documentation if you want, but anything that you've put in SDPC is also going to show up automatically in our system. Which ties into the second to last question there. Do we integrate with SDPC registry API? We sure do. So it's always up to date, like I mentioned, on our side. And the last question, how do we help conduct risk assessments for privacy concerns? So we do. I think one of the things that we do really well is for showing you everything that's in use so that you can also see what apps have privacy concerns that you didn't know about. And then for all those apps, telling you when a privacy policy has changed is going to help expedite your vetting process and kind of determine what needs to go to the top of your list. And then we have a partnership with OneEdTech also to show their reviews. So you can see what they've deemed GDPR, FERPA, COPA compliant. And you can actually filter by a lot of those different things. So what you could do is essentially say, hey, show me all the apps in use. Show me which ones, are new, or show me which ones, don't have an SDPC agreement anywhere in the US or anywhere in my state. Which ones don't have an OneEdTech review, and that kind of can help you understand what is riskier and needs to be prioritized in terms of your review process. So here is a quick snapshot of our partnerships. The top section is SDPC. So you'll be able to see the number of active agreements in your state, so in Utah, the number of active agreements in any state in the US, and then your specific agreement. So this is what's going to come through automatically from SDPC. You don't have to upload anything or do anything to maintain that. You can edit them, but you don't need to. It's just all going to sync. All this is going to sync automatically on your behalf. And then you can also just directly link out to SDPC from here. It'll drop you right into this application within SDPC's website. In the bottom, you've got those OneEdTech ratings. So you can see here that this app is approved, GDPR, FERPA, COPA, and children under 13. So this also helps kind of expedite the process to say, all right, this app is probably safe for use. There's a lot of agreements in Utah already. And, OneEdTech is, you're still going to take a look at the privacy policy, of course, but it definitely helps speed up the process to have additional data sources to look at. So attaching and sharing DPAs for any application, you can see here, this is an example of Amplify. At the top here, see those attachments. You can attach anything that you want. So if you want to go kind of above and beyond what SDPC is pulling in, or maybe you don't have everything in SDPC, you can attach things here. And this is actually showing you what it looks like in your public facing list. So you get to customize that list. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But if you choose to kind of share outward with staff those attachments, that's available for you to do so. The other thing you can do that a lot of folks do in their approval process is they can filter by apps with or without attachments. It's basically some folks that we work with use our system to make sure all the DPAs, or make sure that every application that's approved has a DPA attached. So you can do that. You can filter by, hey, show me one. Common use cases, show me ones without attachments, because I need to actually add the DPAs for those apps. Either way, this kind of helps you manage and make sure that you've got everything, kind of all your ducks in a row in terms of getting all of your DPAs into our system, if that's how you choose to use it. The other thing you can see here, this is an example from our app profile, the bottom right. It's just another place to kind of show you where those approval attachments can live and be accessed. And then I mentioned privacy policy changes. I've blocked out this vendor's name so that we don't call anybody out. But this is a really interesting example where for every app in our library, because we maintain and keep a record of all those privacy policies, we actually track how often they're changed, and you can compare versions to each other. So say you approve this app, maybe at the beginning of 2024, and then you see, hey, it's changed 4 times since then. You can actually kind of compare the two to each other, and it'll show you what's changed. So you don't have to go read back through the whole policy. You can just look at what's changed and say, all right, this wasn't significant. We're good. I'm not going to, I'm okay to continue to have this app be approved. In this case, you can see this one application took out they said they do not collect sensitive data. And then suddenly they deleted or behavior data. So I guess now they do collect behavior data. So there are some times that a tiny little change like that makes a big difference in whether or not it's compliant with your district's or your LEA's policies, and whether it's something that you actually want approved for student use. So all this is kind of highlighted here for every application in our library. And then I mentioned like how we can make it easier to sort of vet and do privacy assessments. Identifying the new apps in use is always big, just in saying, hey, these are probably apps we've never vetted them, or they're new. Like there are new apps that come out every month, especially with this AI revolution. You see a new app almost every week. So this is going to be available so it can kind of show you what you need to be reviewing. If you go to your app activity report, that's the one-stop shop for everything in use across your network, across all your devices. And you can filter by, hey, show me only new apps, and also show me apps that have no third-party reviews. So they've not been looked at by One Ed Tech. There's not a single STPC agreement anywhere in the United States. These are apps that you really should probably take a look at sooner rather than later. So it's going to help you with that prioritization. And this shows you that third-party review filter. So you can also filter this report by, hey, show me the apps that do have agreements in my state. Show me the apps that One Ed Tech has vetted. So the flip side is just as important to that equation as well. And then I mentioned the public list, like the ability to make your kind of vetting process public for staff consumption. I don't want to go over this too fast because this is a huge part of our platform, and it really applies, especially with the sort of the data dictionary requirements that you guys have. What we have is the ability to create up to 3 fully customizable public-facing lists. So, you go through all this hard work of approving applications. You spend all this time vetting. You get all these teams involved, and everybody vets these applications, and you make these decisions. And then what do you do from there? What we allow you to do is create 3 different, and you don't have to do 3, but we give you the option to do as many as you need to, versions of those applications. So the most common use case is going to be the public facing list versus the staff facing list. So public facing list, and you can kind of see here on the left what your options are. You can decide where these lists show up and what shows up in these individual lists. So here on the left, you can choose to make this list public via URL or embed code. So there's the kind of, hey, I'm going to put this on my LEA's website. I'm going to embed this somewhere where staff can access it. The other option you have is to make it available in Lightspeed Classroom. This is something that is free for you all to use. So I would recommend you use this option if you do adopt Lightspeed Classroom for free, because it's a very intuitive interface for staff, for teachers, and it's in the place that they're managing their classrooms already. So they can just easily see that list of apps and make requests like very easily from a spot that they're already in every day. Then you can decide, what am I going to show? So maybe for staff, you want to show all statuses, because if they can see what's in review, that means they're not going to request apps that you're already reviewing. But maybe for the public, maybe you need to be transparent with parents and guardians. So you want to display just what's approved for use. You don't want to display what you're reviewing, what you're in the process of reviewing. You want to keep it very simple. So you can customize all that. You can say, hey, my public list is only going to show approved apps. My staff list is going to show everything. Keep clicking too soon. You can also, upload your logo, add additional information. You can make the header say whatever you want. You can say, hey, this is my staff-facing whatever list. It's your call, how you kind of want to make these things look to the public or to your staff. And then you can also control what fields will show up. So maybe for staff, you want them to see all those DPAs. You want them to see the SDPC agreements, everything. You want staff to have access to all that different metadata for those different applications. You can check all the boxes and say, show my teachers everything. I want them to know exactly what's going on with these apps. But again, the general public, for the board, for parents, you just want them to see a few basic pieces of information. What's the app name? When did you approve it? Is it approved or not? You can pare that down and make that really, really simple. And again, each of these lists is going to have their own embed code, their own link. You can turn requests on for some, for the staff list, but not take requests from the public. Can't overstate how flexible it is, and it's really designed for you to be able to meet those requirements that I think we're going to go over in the next section. All right, metadata dictionary. So this is obviously of huge importance to all of you. So I want to make sure to walk through how we can help comply with those requirements, which I know is very time consuming for you guys. So the first question is around like our vendor profiles. What does it include? So our app profiles are very robust and include descriptions of the app, tags and categories, those privacy changes that I showed you, those agreements, one-on-tech reviews, usage data. I'll show you a screenshot and kind of make sure to point everything out. But the idea is we've got tons of data that Lightspeed is maintaining for you. And then you can customize it too. So you can add your own tags, your own details, embed your own videos, whatever you want to do, but it's all going to live in one spot. So it's all going to be consolidated on your behalf. Are they customizable and editable by the LEA? Yes. And I'll show you, again, I mentioned these things already, the tags, videos, DPAs, approval statuses, licensing statuses are all fully customizable, and I'll show you a screenshot and point that stuff out for you. How can you document the following? Justification for use, purpose for use, and FERPA exception. We generally advise you all to use those custom tags, which is great because then you can filter other reports by those tags. So you can go to your app activity report and say, hey, show me apps that do not have these tags, that don't have any justification for use, purpose for use, FERPA exception tags. And then you can add those tags so that you can meet all the requirements that you need to. And then how do we display information about a vendor? Easy access to privacy statuses, links, all of that is in that app profile. So it's very, very comprehensive and consolidated all in one spot for you guys to have at your convenience. And then the last question, the public-facing metadata dictionary. That's that app list that I showed you where you can display everything out to the public. So if you create custom tags, display those out publicly. I'll go back to my screenshot. You could make your third list here. You could call this my metadata dictionary, and you could just make sure that everything you need displayed per that requirement is in that third list, and make sure that you can check that box and it's going to stay up to date. Like if the privacy policy changes, we're going to make sure that it's up to date. You don't have to do that. All right, so more kind of screenshot examples. This is the comprehensive app profile that I mentioned. It actually gets cut off. There's actually more in here that isn't in the screenshot, but You can see here things that Lightspeed maintains. So we're going to maintain things like the pricing model. Is it paid or free? Is it both? Tags like, how is this application used? We've got a lot of helpful tags like, is there a public facing VPAT? So if you want to make sure that everything is accessible per WGAC or CAG, I always get that wrong, standards, we maintain a tag that says this app has a public facing VPAT, which is that accessibility checklist. So we maintain all that for you guys as well. The publisher, and then here's links to the website, the privacy policy, and the terms of service. This is all your customizable sections. So you can see here this FERPA exception tag that I added. This is an example of like you can add this information to any application in the library and then filter any report by those tags. So it's really helpful in kind of seeing what meets some of your requirements and on the flip side, what doesn't and doesn't have those tags, as well as this additional description. So you can put whatever information you want about how the app is used or who the contact person is or a training video, really anything that you need people to be able to see. This privacy policy section is what links to that cool kind of comparison feature that I showed you. But you can always see the last time the policy was updated and also the number of versions that we've seen of that policy for that application. And then below, you would see SDPC and One Ed Tech information, but that got cut off in the screenshot. So up here at the top, we've got some just general trends across we're in many different states and countries across the world. So you can see just some global statistics like how many districts do we see using the application? How many districts do we see approving or paying for this application? So just good stats that kind of give you a benchmark of how it's being used across Lightspeed's client base. And then that app usage data, we dove into that earlier where you can look at campus adoption, grade adoption, trends over time. You can click any of these schools and drill into a user report to say what users in that school are using this application to do any kind of reporting you need to do. So it's all going to be in one spot. And like I mentioned, if these links change, we will change them. You don't have to worry about that. We make sure everything is always up to date here with the exception of the stuff that is custom to you. Here's another example of those tags. So adding here like the justification tag, the FERPA exception tag that we talked about, and you can show here some of these different DPA attachments. And then here, it's just an example of how you can filter. So you can go into your app activity report. That's kind of like your baseline of what's being used. And then filter by any of those tags that you create to say, here are all the apps in use that sort of have this tag or don't have this tag to help you figure out what you need to be reviewing or what shouldn't even be in use because it hasn't met some of those requirements that you guys have. Now we're at the summary section. So the idea here is just to kind of succinctly summarize the key advantages, and I'll try to be succinct, though that's not my strength. So some of the benefits of this product, improved data security. This is an area where we really pride ourselves because we can identify those rogue apps or those unknown apps that need to be vetted. Those are very risky. You see all the time things popping up that have really problematic privacy policies that were written by AI or collect all sorts of data or are housed in all sorts of places that we don't want our data going. So we're going to catch all that for you, and you're never going to be kind of in the dark about what's going on and what's being used. Plus those push notifications about changes to policy. So if you've approved 500 applications and any of those privacy policies change, you'll get an email saying, hey, we saw a change to these 5 approved apps privacy policies, and you can click in and actually see the highlights of what has changed. So streamlining the app request process, really we pride ourselves on being that ecosystem that connects both the request process, the vetting process, and that public facing process. It's all going to be in one spot in this connected ecosystem, living alongside that usage and adoption data. Plus, those admin roles are going to allow you to carve the product up to make sure that everybody can gain access to what they need without seeing or being overwhelmed by too much information or workflows that don't apply to that role. And then lastly, the easy teacher access to vetted apps via our classroom product or those different public lists that you can embed and link. I mean, really, wherever you decide to put those lists, We aim to make it very easy for teachers to access and look for new apps and request apps to be vetted. Better compliance with data privacy laws. That centralized repository of DPAs is huge, plus that automatic syncing with SDPC to make sure all those exhibits and all those DPAs that are living in that resource registry are pulled into our system as well, so it's all in one spot. Plus that public facing list. Huge, huge, huge for complying with the different rules and regulations facing not just you guys, but lots of other districts or states rather in the US. Data-driven decision-making regarding app adoption. The nature of sort of having the data and being able to see usage down to the student at the grade level or the campus level really helps make sure that you're not making decisions in the dark. You're not sort of guessing as to what needs to be renewed or where training and PD needs to be done. It's all going to be very easy to figure out just by looking at what those adoption levels are compared to what you expected them to be. And then lastly, enhanced transparency and accountability. This comes down to those public lists. Like you can create and customize those however you need to and make sure that you are really sharing the hard work that you're doing to put into your approval process is really showing, hey, we vetted all these apps. Here's what they are. Here's why we approve them. And here's how we recommend you use them. So that's going to make it really easy for you to maintain that accountability with your stakeholders, your students, your parents, and everybody who kind of is invested in this app process. Call to action and next steps. So if you have questions about the product, go ahead and email our product marketing folks. That's going to just be for like general product inquiries, like, hey, I need a training video or I want to know more about this thing. Shoot an email to that email address. They'll get back to you. If you have feature requests, like if you are a customer or a user of this product and you're like, hey, I really wish it did this one thing, there's a link there. You can put in feature requests. I review them myself. And I'll mark which ones we're actually working on, so you can kind of stay in the loop with what features, like if you submit an idea, is it something that we're going to do, planning to do, can't do? You'll kind of get that feedback through that link there. This actually, I realize, I'll send you a new version, John. We've got our product marketing folks added some demo videos here and also some information on webinars here at the bottom. So I'll get those to you guys in a newer version. But before I wrap, I do want to talk about what's coming soon. And I wish I could have showed you stuff that was coming soon, but I stuck to what was just current. We're actually improving all of our sort of everything you just saw around approvals. We're making even better. We're adding some automation so you can create.
Go ahead. What's one thing that you want to what's a little seed that you want to plant? A light seed.
Oh, I love that rhyme. Okay, so here's a couple seeds I'll plant. One, we are in the next month releasing more granular like digital textbook reporting for ROI. So like content, like resource level. So math versus ELA versus science. It's gonna be very cool. I'm gonna plant like 3 seeds. I'm sorry. Huh? This customizable workflow. So being able to kind of like say, hey, after IT reviews, it always goes to instruction, and then it goes to finance, and then it goes to John. He's the final approver. You can create all that automation in our system coming soon. Plus customizing that request form, those statuses. It's going to be very cool, and that's all coming before back to school. So like before the school year kicks back up, this is all going to be there. Plus, last seed, notifications about risky apps. So we're taking our privacy policy reviews and kicking it up a notch by saying, like, we're going to create a rubric to say, okay, based on these privacy policies, which ones collect student data, share student data. We're going to have a bunch of different things that kind of like Lightspeed thinks is risky, but then down the road, letting LEAs and districts customize that. So maybe for you, there's something that you specifically are worried about. And you can say, okay, tell me if an app hosts data outside of the US, whatever your question is. And we're going to leverage AI, ironically, to vet these apps and alert you proactively to anything that we consider risky, which is going to be huge, especially as I know data privacy is like the theme of what so much of this is about. So there's my final seed done.